And our last speaker is Marianna Capasso. She's calling from the Netherlands. She has been working on research related to the work cultures and HR and the hiring tools that we can have. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm sorry if I'm not in person with you, but yeah, I'm in Utrecht right now. And as Emma, thanks Emma for the invite, and thanks for all the organizer for you for this spot. I'm a postdoc at Utrecht University, and I'm working on an Horizon project on algorithmic discrimination in hiring. And my perspective will be cross-cultural in the sense that even in this case, this specific case, algorithmic discrimination, we should have a more complex, nuanced perspective on what does it mean to be discriminated against by an algorithm. And I start with a practical example. I don't know if someone of you knows about this case. A few years ago, Amazon started to use an CV screening system. But this CV screening system was found out to be discriminating against women. Why? Because the system was based on biased historical training data. Based on the fact that in the past 10 years, Amazon basically hired mostly men as software engineers than women. So the Amazon case, in the Amazon case, the system taught itself that male candidates were preferable based on what? On embedded gendered information on the CVs, like women chess club captain or 2 all-women colleges, but also based on agentic language on the CVs, like executed, captured. So that's why they found out they discriminated against women. But algorithmic hiring, that is the use of AI to find and select candidates, have many tools. Like there are more than 250 tools on the market right now. So you can have automated job description, recommending algorithms that match employer, algorithm, as in the Amazon case, that extract information from CVs, video interviews. And I can give you other practical examples, like, for example, a German broadcaster did an experiment a few years ago with the video interviews based on AI, and they found out that the same candidate repeating the same answers while looking different, so like wearing glasses or having a bookshelf as a background, can lead to different assessment by the AI, so perpetuating stereotypes. Or also sentimental analysis system that could be used in algorithmic hiring system can lead to intersectional case of discrimination. For example, systematic bias against queer women in comparison to queer men. And this is a study from last year. Or again, also search algorithms on employment website, normalize gender job titles, and they can also reduce the visibility of job openings and exclude people from opportunities. Like women are more likely to respond to job titles in which both genders are mentioned, so like chairwoman, chairman, instead of just chairman. And at the beginning of the year, we had this UNESCO report on generative AI, in which they said that, again, when we ask large language models to write a story about people across gender, sexuality, we can have, again, systematic prejudice. So like British men were assigned most likely bank clerk, doctor as a profession, while Zulu men mostly gardener, and Zulu women like domestic servants, housekeepers. In all this case, what's the reason of all this case? Basically, the data sets track power shadows. That means track what is easy to gather, it's easy available, what it's considered legitimate, but according to social, cultural, political factors. And it's not just about representational harms, that means based on societal standing, reputation, cultural harmony, so how a system can reinforce stereotypes, but it's also about allocative harms, because representational harms can influence allocative harms, so how a system unfairly exclude the access to resources, disposition, roles from some group in society. And this allows me to step in the next section, that is the topic of my talk, that is the ethics of discrimination. Because what is discrimination? We have different conceptualization of discrimination, but according to one of the most famous in philosophy, at least because I'm a philosopher of technology, discrimination is not just differential treatment, but it's differential treatment plus being a member of a socially silent group. That means, according to the GDPR, is the special categories of data, like having a gender, having a race, having a proper religion, or a sexual orientation. So a socially silent group is defined as is important across social interaction across a wide range of social contexts. But why adopting a cross-cultural perspective? Because discriminatory behaviors are specifically directed to cultural specific norms. So they are specifically based on a given social and cultural context. And I can give you, again, a practical example from our project. We are working right now with Algorithmic Watch, this NGO organization that is specialized in AI auditing. And they say to us that the variable Polish in Poland can be just descriptive, but in UK, especially after the referendum in 2016 or after the 2008 economic crisis, Polish is not just descriptive, it is considered discriminatory because Polish people are considered as an economic threat that led to job shortages. So even just a variable, a socially silent variable, can be considered descriptive or not as normative in different contexts. And apart from the definition of discrimination, there is a taxonomy of discrimination, so different type of discrimination. And one of the most famous one is, of course, the indirect. It is famous because it's also more common. It's the one related to indirect discrimination. That means that indirect discrimination works this way. It's neither explicitly targets or is intended to disadvantage members of the groups, but at the end, is like a discrimination by design. How the structure, all the norms are designed led to a kind of discrimination. So not like men fit better on how the labor market is set up. Why? Because of family life arrangement, because they have no caregiving responsibility period. And in the same way, also statistical discrimination. So a practice can be statistical discriminatory if it's based on information about a group. So a company may fail to hire a woman because why? Because her gender can be reliable, predictable, whoever wanted to take a parental leave. But what is new about algorithmic discrimination? Because algorithmic discrimination, in a certain sense, can challenge some assumption of the ethics of discrimination. There are many ways in which algorithmic decision-making can lead to discrimination. How we target the variable, how we label the data, how we collect the training data. In the case of the Amazon system, was based on biased historical data of the last 10 years for the company future selector, but maybe the most interesting one that I want to focus on in this presentation is the last one, based on proxy. What are proxy? Proxy can be certain piece of data that are contained in dataset that can be correlated, can act as stand-in for certain protected characteristic. So like having a certain zip code can be correlated in certain segregated area, in certain area, to a certain ethnicity. So this is a proxy, for example. But I want to, again, give a concrete case. Following a New Court judgment, which established that gender information cannot be used for insurance premium risk calculation, the UK insurance industry cannot use directly gender. But what they do, they assess the risk and premium paid for liability based not on gender, of course, but on information like the type of the car, if the person has modified the car. And in this situation, men still pay on average higher premiums than women. But if we look at this example, we can see how proxy are based on social meanings and categories, like being more prone to risk as a man characteristic behavior. And we can also challenge the assumption that discrimination is basically strictly related to being a member of a socially silent group. Consider this example. In HR, we can use we can treat different people that drive red cars, eat rice, have long hair This, of course, doesn't form really socially silent group. But again, if we use algorithms that screen people based on this category, we can also have emergent categories. So asking ourselves if this can be considered a socially silent group in the future. And we have an existing example right now, because automated system can also identify new correlation between data. So discrimination may even occur based on information that not even a proxy for sensitive attributes, so remaining outside the scope of anti-discrimination law. And there was a case here in the Netherlands last year. A Dutch insurance company was found out to be discriminating against customers living in apartments whose number contains letters. So, and this is not a proxy for a sensitive attribute. So, does discrimination apply only to socially silent groups? No. Of course, also other forms of discrimination can become more widespread, and discriminatory practices can target people exactly because they do not fit into a conventional sorting of people or into recognized group. And again, algorithmic fairness from the computer science is based on uncover and rectify disparities, performance with respect to silent groups, but fairness should have context-sensitive meanings that need to be negotiated, and that's why also a cross-cultural perspective can step in this situation. Again, because we can have systematic discrimination, they're not just against one group, but across groups. Think about, again, the case of intersectional discrimination, as in the case of the sentimental analysis. It's not just a groups. We have interlocking system of powers here, which maybe the vast majority of cases of proxy discrimination, developers or users are not being aware of. So there is an unintentional perspective also. And the last minutes of my presentation are devoted also to a specific case that we are now tracking in our Horizon Europe project. We try to create a synthetic dataset of CVs based on a data donation campaign that collected more than 1,000 CVs, anonymized CVs. Why? For creating a dataset that can be less biased and can help to develop more computational modes for having systems that cannot discriminate, like in the Amazon case. And the synthetic CV generation, of course, is based on anonymized materials, but at the same time, this synthetic CV want to resemble attributes of people, so special categories of data of people, because we ask people to fill in a form with this data. So we aim to create a balance within preserving privacy, but also augmenting the variability, the diversity in the data. But again, in this case, we can have a bigger picture on discrimination. So one of our questions in the project was, is there other piece of data that was not visible in the CV, not asked in the CV, that may lead to discriminatory risk? Because of course, protected attributes may not be used because there are no protected attributes in the CVs. But again, proxy-based discrimination, as I said before. So the special categories of data do not exhaust the categories of data that can be used to discriminate. And there is a huge literature, and right now we are working on a qualitative paper, qualitative analysis of these CVs. But just to tell you that there is a huge literature review on how also in the CV screening system, there can be a lot of sensitive attribute proxy. Like, for example, work gaps can be correlated to gender. So having, again, because women have more caregiving responsibility, or spoken languages, education, early employment, zip codes can be correlated to ethnicity, or hobby like playing golf can be correlated to socioeconomic status. But also, in more subtle ways, links to social media, like in Twitter, if we use a specific hashtag like Black Lives Matter or this kind of stuff, can also be correlated to political orientation of candidates. And in all these examples, we can see how it's important for models to evaluate and study the context in which these models are trained and then applied, and how proxy, there is now an ongoing discussion on how proxy can be inextricably linked to social categories. But what does it mean, inextricably linked? Means that they are based on social meanings, social categories, and are context sensitive. And So we should be aware of also the socio-cultural relevance of data. As we said before, like me being more prone to risk as a male characteristic or adopting an agenting language in CVs as related to a male behavior. And that's why also talking about data sets, the data sets are not just what the data set ends up measuring, an observed space, or what the data set aims to measure, construct space, but we should also give a legitimization to what we are doing, to how models and metrics can be performative. So also analyze the potential space. So how individuals and group potential and biases can arise and can have different social inequalities. There's an impact. So like protected attributes that have an impact on other protected attributes, like race affecting educational opportunities. So even while developing synthetic datasets, we should be aware of the potential space. So how people can have different socially, culturally differentiated practices when they are writing a CV. And last 2 minutes, because maybe we run out of time, this is strictly related to the idea of talking about responsibility in that ecosystem, because of course, collective sensitive categories data is important to prevent bias, but also to draw statistics on diversity. And if we want also to implement positive discrimination, so how to counteract, balance the access to position, so promote substantial equality. And to refer to a recent case, the GDPR prohibits the use of special categories of data, but the recent AI Act provides exception to this GDPR prohibition. When this use of data is used for bias detection, is subject to appropriate safeguards. But it's not clear what this appropriate safeguard can be, who is in control of these appropriate safeguards, like providers, controllers. And for example, synthetic data has been seen as an appropriate safeguard that can enable bias detection without the use of sensitive data. But again, does these safeguards structurally remove the reference to sensitive data? No, because again, synthetic data can be based on semi-synthetic datasets that still implement some data. And mostly important, even when using synthetic data, we need to have a parties that store, that collect this data. So, and there is now this analytical approach, like the trusted third-party approach, that said that this entity should run analysis, discriminatory analysis of this data, but it's unclear who can be a trusted third parties, because you can have, of course, National Statistics Bureau of member states that already have a lot of this information. So for example, in the Netherlands, company can ask the National Statistical Bureau about gender balance in their composition of workers, trade unions, NGOs, but or also consultancy, accountancy firms. But all of these parties has different level of technical expertise, different requirements of transparency and trustworthiness, and also less auditing competence. So, for example, in case when HR are involved, maybe it's better that the trusted third parties can be a trade unions. Or if marginalized groups are involved, maybe it's better to ask for an NGO that already have co-creation modes inside it, co-participation modes inside it in their works, in their processes. So again, why cross-cultural? Because that ecosystem are messy, are contextually embedded, and presenting different power dynamics and different socio-technical problems. So adopting a cross-cultural perspective on these topics is not just talking about inclusion, like include stakeholders with co-creation, but it's also about implementing another principle of responsible innovation that means responsiveness. So a capacity also to change innovation, change the direction of innovation based on emerging values, on emerging perspectives. Thanks and I'm looking forward to your question.